Hey everyone, welcome to today's broadcast. I am Mike Gilman with High Five Career Coaching, and tonight I've got a new series of broadcasts for leaders out there that may be struggling. So whether you're a first-time leader or whether you're a seasoned executive, the topics that I'm choosing are ones that have come up in my last 20 years as an internal consultant and coach, as well as an external independent consultant and coach. And so I'm going to share some building blocks. We completed a series on building a rock solid team, and we're continuing that with how to engage your employees. That's a common concern. So this is part of a new series for engaging your employees. And tonight's topic, I'll just give a brief rundown of the series and then we'll dive in. Tonight's topic is assessing team conflict. So we're going straight to it. Addressing team conflict. We're also going to cover next week holding candid performance conversations, having career conversations with your employees, developing high potentials. What are they? What can you do to develop high potentials? Making empowering decisions, mastering motivation, and overcoming obstacles and setbacks. So those are the 7 topics that I'll be covering over the next 7 weeks, including this evening or morning time, wherever you're watching this from, afternoon. And we'll just keep continuing after that. We have another series after that. So right now it's about engaging your employees. So if you've ever had like Groundhog Day where you have the same conflicts coming up over and over again, so maybe you have employees coming to you and complaining. Maybe they're, you see them sniping at each other on emails and they're copying you on these conversations where it's just CYA type of culture. CYA type culture is, cover your ASS, for those of you that aren't familiar with that term. And just downright unproductive behaviors. And your team is suffering as a result. Your team's suffering as a result. And, it gives you a headache, right? Gives you a headache. So if you ever find yourself saying, oh, if they would only just stop acting like kindergartners, or if they would only just, right? That's a signal to you that there's something as you as a leader could be doing. And I'm going to give you some strategies that you can use to improve your chances of success. And sometimes it's not always obvious. And so one of the key things is to describe what's the impact of the conflict. So that's the first one, is describe what's the impact, even just describe it to yourself. What's the impact of the conflict to your team? So are you missing deadlines as a team, right? Is the quality of work suffering on the team or not meeting expectations, right? Does it take super long to do something that should take a minute to do, right? So identify what's the impact. Is it affecting sales? Is it affecting the customer satisfaction, internal or external? So these are all important metrics to identify up front to help you determine your strategy and the approach, right? So what's the ultimate impact? Okay, why does it matter? So answer that question, why does it matter? A second step is to diagnose the root cause and the commitment. We often fail to do that. So diagnose the root cause and the commitment to change. So, many conflicts on the surface might appear to be between like a couple people sniping at each other, but they're often symptoms of deeper issues on the team. So what are some of these? Well, sometimes it's just a plain personality conflict, right? Different communication styles, and they're just like oil and water, right? So, sometimes it's just that. And that I wouldn't even call a team conflict necessarily if it's primarily just a couple of people on the team. It could certainly have ripple effects for the team. So it may or may not fall into that category. Policies that we have, right? We might have certain policies that really interfere and inhibit the team working together as a team, or prevent the team from solving the issue themselves. For example, these might not be formal policies, they could just be practices that you have in your organization, informal practices, but well established. And that might be that everything needs to run through you. Maybe that's the policy. Informal or formal, right? And if everything needs to run through you, then they're not going to necessarily strengthen their muscle in resolving things themselves. Or if the practice, maybe that's not the policy, but maybe that's what the practice is. Whenever there's a conflict, they come to you first. So you want to kind of assess what's going on here. Procedures. Are there procedures within their work that set them up for natural conflict? Right, where they're going to be stepping on each other's toes, or whether there's going to be big gaps or lack of clarity where the handoffs are, with who's doing what part. Another reason might be the priorities. You might have competing priorities or goals among the different team members. You could also have different payoffs, right? There might be some, in a weird way, there might be a payoff for having a conflict with someone. Maybe sometimes some people stir up conflicts just because it takes away attention from them, right? So they'll stir the pot on something else or focus on something else, whatever it is. So the key thing is to take the time to really try to diagnose the root cause. The flip side of that, or an additional aspect of that, I should say, and I'll usually talk to people one-on-one. You might want to bring in a third party, okay, like an internal organizational development consultant or an external consultant or coach, right? That's something that I do. But the payoff might be high. Oh, the payoff might be high, so you have to determine what's their commitment to change. Because if the payoff's really high to keep it the same, as dysfunctional as it may be, you're not going to get very far. So try to gauge a sense of what's their commitment. How frustrated are they? How ready is the team to make a change? Individually, how ready are they to make that change? And then collectively. One other thing are just the patterns of behavior will also inform the potential solutions. So the third tip is to create safety. Create safety. So I'm going to give you an example too while we're at it. So I had a team once that for 2 to 3 years was bickering over this carpool vehicle that they all needed to share. It's for a department. They would go out and sign the vehicle out and take it out into field sites and whatnot to do investigations and things like that. So they had about an 8 or 9 member team and 2 vehicles that they could use. And they were always fighting about it. And then it became personal, and it blew up into all these other issues on the team. It led to some turnover. It led to just a lot of different things. And the team just was not, they were focused on everything but their jobs. And it was really, so by the time they called me in, they were exasperated at that point, and they called me in for help. After doing the assessment, what I discovered was it really had to do in part with the way they structured the organization, the accountabilities. They had a peer who was responsible for being like the policy cop. And the conflicts was around like, oh, the car wasn't fueled up for the next person, or someone left it at their house overnight. So it wasn't ready at the workplace the next day for someone else to use. Or someone left their smelly, dirty gym bag and clothes in the back seat of the car or the trunk, and it was kind of this noxious fumes, and so on and so forth. Someone left their drink in the drink cup holder and spilled, all over, with the sticky soda or whatever. So you name it. So ultimately, though, the issues were deeper issues, right? And I won't get into it in this broadcast, but it took getting a sense of, okay, this is really about the way that they're organized, and it was a symptom of something else. It was more about lack of respect that they had for each other in general, and we had to address that. And once we addressed it, once we named the issue, and they were able to solve the carpool issue within 15 minutes, I don't know, very quickly. Very quickly, something that had been plaguing them for years. All right. So the third tip is really around creating safety. How do you set the tone for having those conversations? Well, you have to avoid the blame game. That's a big part of it. And acknowledge how frustrating it is for people. Just acknowledge what is. Set some ground rules as well. Okay, leave your badges at the door. So regardless of the hierarchy. So all those things play a role into power dynamics and people feeling safe or unsafe to share what needs to be shared. So if you really want to get to the bottom of it, and also to have a neutral setting, right? So that's going to be different for everyone, what that means. But it may be a conference room. A lot of times I'd like to just recommend a place that the team hasn't been before or often, where there aren't deep emotions or anything associated or experiences associated with that particular room or area, right? Because that just kind of feeds a lot of things. So you get people in a new environment, it can really help work wonders. The fourth strategy is to separate in the meeting itself, separate understanding what's going on for people versus the solutions. Oftentimes someone will say, oh, this is something that what bothers me, and someone just jumps right in with a solution. Let's separate that. Keep it separate. Focus first, like Stephen Covey said in his 7 Habits, seek first to understand, right? And that can be part of your ground rules, but seek first to understand. Then once everyone feels heard, then you can start brainstorming some solutions, making some suggestions or recommendations, and exploring all that, right? Just like you would with a regular problem-solving process. The 5th tip that I'm going to share tonight is accountability. Set up an accountability mechanism. So whatever you end up agreeing to, and you might have to just continue the meeting, maybe just agreeing to meet again in a week to continue the conversation. But let's say you come to some type of solution or agreement. Well, it might not always work out the way you thought it did. So build in an opportunity for the team to check in with each other around how well it's working. Just build that in terms of, to talk about managing expectations in my last broadcast. Just build that in. Like, it may not go perfectly. We're imperfect people with a new solution. It might not go perfectly. So So just build that in, build in an allowance. Say, okay, and how are people gonna hold themselves accountable, or how are we gonna hold each other accountable? Right? Is it okay to ask someone how it's going after a few days? Right? Just make it transparent so people don't take things personally necessarily. Just build it in. How often do we want to check in with each other? Or how will we know when we're off track? And what do we want to do about it? So that's all preventative first aid, right? So just anticipate, and as a team, you can decide how you want to handle it. Or as a leader, you can, share with the team how you would like to see something handled, right? Just so that there's clarity. So those are my tips for today. So 1, describe the impacts. 2, diagnose the root cause and gauge their commitment to change. 3, create safety. 4, separate understanding from solutions. And 5, set them up for accountability, for being accountable. So there you go. Those are my some strategies for addressing team conflicts. I've got about 30 more, but I'm keeping everything to 5. And these are common ones that aren't necessarily rocket science, but teams often trip up over these fundamentals. So hopefully they were helpful. If you found this valuable, please share this broadcast. And if you find that you need like an extra ear, a neutral ear for all of this, feel free to reach out to me or message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to jump on a quick call with you and strategize or whatnot. If you need something more extensive, like you want some help facilitating this type of conversation, I'm happy to do that. I have a team as well. We can help you with that. At High Five Career Coaching. So feel free. But whatever makes sense for you. But don't feel like you have to go at it alone. I guess that's my message. Right? A lot of times it can be really tough. We get very emotional. And in fact, I do recommend you have someone neutral within your company or outside your company facilitate it. If this has been like a really chronic or it's a high stakes type of conflict on the team. And that way, that'll free you up as a leader to be a full participant too. Particularly if you're part of the problem or you don't have their trust. And it is a tip. As leaders, we're always part of the problem. We might not be the main reason for it, but we do play a part. So we do need, and that's a whole nother thing, kind of owning up to it. But we won't get into that today. All right, take care. Thank you for watching. And I will hopefully see you next Tuesday, 5 o'clock. Next week, we're going to be talking about performance conversations, how to have candid performance conversations. So maybe it's an employee that isn't meeting your expectations, how to close that gap. All right. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.